Hi, everybody, and welcome to this week's Far West Classic edition of Talkin' Beavers. And indeed, how about that? What a great holiday tradition revived. The Far West Classic invite featuring 2 games both nights. Weber State and the Portland Pilots will tip it off. The Beavers will take on a much-improved Cal State Fullerton team. And then Saturday night, the Beavers against Tulsa. We're going to talk about all of that, GP2's dunk, and more. Welcome in to Talkin' Beavers. It starts now. Welcome in to this edition of Talkin' Beavers outside of the beautiful Moda Center. The Beavers will go inside for the Far West Classic invite. We've got a lot to talk about as we welcome you in to our Flat Tail Brewing studios for this Far West Classic edition, and joined by former Beaver Lamar Hurd. Lamar, these are exciting times. We've got a lot to talk about when it comes to the Far West Classic. We'll have Coach Tinkle and GP2, but let's get right into your thoughts about what took place in the big city of Kansas City this past Saturday night.
It was crazy. I was calling the Colorado and BYU game for the Pac-12 at the same exact time as the Oregon State game was being taken place, and I'm getting updates left and right. First of all, my phone blew up after the GP2 dunk, which we're going to talk to him about later on. But after going back and getting a chance to watch the game on DVR, I was very impressed. Specifically by the first half, the way that Oregon State really took the fight to Kansas. And I'm not sure that it's one of those deals where Kansas underestimated them. Oregon State was the better team in the first half, and Trace Tinkle, his play leading up to that game, to me, has been impressive just because he wasn't making shots, but he was still making impact. And anytime a player can do that, you start to imagine, well, what's going to happen once he does start making shots? You know, how much is that going to open up for his game? And the way he went out there, shot the ball on the road against that kind of defensive team has to give Oregon State a lot of encouragement. And Stevie Thompson Jr. didn't necessarily have the game that we've seen him have several times throughout this season. But, you know, that freshman class, I can't say enough about him. It's the most highly touted freshman class for a reason, and we're seeing the reasons why.
It was so great, Lamar, to see Trace, and you played enough to know that if you're in a slump, 3 for 15 from three-point range, he banked the first one.
He banked the first one.
Didn't call it. I didn't hear him call it, but sometimes that can get you going.
Well, he didn't call it because the banks were closed at that hour, first of all. But it can get him going, and it's something that Wayne Tinkle's been talking to him about, is just shoot the ball with confidence. Quit worrying about the fact that you're my son and you're trying not to do too much. When you're one of the better players, you have to shoot shots. And, you know, some players, they battle with that because they may feel a little selfish about it. But when you're good, you have to be selfish, because that's the thing that helps the team the most.
We'll talk a little bit more with Wayne about Trace's breakout game later, but Lydia had a chance to visit with Trace Tinkle himself, not only about Trace's hot shooting, but just about the Beavers able to go to Kansas City and measure themselves. Did they think they had a chance to win that game in Kansas City?
It was fun, you know. We knew we had a chance to compete. You know, we wanted to go there and, you know, show that we can play with them and hang with the best. And I think that's what we did for at least one half. And then the second half, we just kind of got a little complacent with ourselves. You know, thought that we were going to keep it on them. And, you know, you obviously can't think that. You have to go out there and, you know, fight for 40 minutes. And, you know, all we did was really 20. And, you know, like I said, give it to them for shooting the ball well. They didn't really change anything defensively. I think they just started hitting shots, and our defense, you know, like I said, we weren't being aggressive or attacking and things like that. And so we just kind of didn't play a complete game.
You were 3 for 15 from the three-point line before this game. What happened that changed that?
You know, I think it's just confidence, I guess. You know, going into the season, it's kind of struggling and it's frustrating, but I had the support of my coaches and my teammates just telling me to keep shooting it, that I'm a shooter. And, you know, it's going to come around. You know, everyone goes through a little slump every once in a while. And so I just try to keep that in the back of my mind and mostly just have fun with it, you know. Being too hard on myself, you know, trying to play and, you know, please others. And so just try to, you know, play basketball like I know how to, and then shots started falling.
It seems like it might be kind of hard to play for your dad, you know, someone you've grown up with who you might see as a father figure more than a coach sometimes. Has that been hard at all, or what have you learned or are still learning?
Definitely still learning. You know, it's definitely been tough just because, you know, we're both doing this for the first time. And, you know, it's definitely, you know, when you look back and reflect, it's, you know, a lot of great things come out of it. But, you know, sometimes in the moment, you kind of gets frustrating and just, you know, hard to deal with. But at the end of the day, we figure out, you know, that we always want the best for each other. And, we had a talk just probably like a week and a half ago, just saying how we feel and what we need to do to make things better. And then we also talked to Doug McDermott and his dad, just because they went through the same thing. And he said, oh, it's the same thing we went through when Doug was a freshman, And so just figured things out from there and just try to move forward. And so we've had a lot of, encouragement from others, firsthand experience. And, that's what we're trying to build moving forward.
Player, coach, father, son. We'll talk more about that in a moment. Let's take a look first, though, at our Les Schwab quick fix. Les Schwab doing the right thing since 1952. Indeed, the Beavers were hot in the first half and building a lead that was as large as 14. Cooled off a little bit in the second half, as the numbers show, with Olaf in foul trouble. That certainly hurt the Beavers in their chances to try to keep that ball flowing into the hoop from beyond the line. But Lamar, let's talk a little bit about what Trace just said about the talk with the McDermott family, the great coach, Greg, his son, Doug, and that kind of seemed to light a spark for both Wayne and Trace.
Yeah, Wayne told me that conversation was going to take place because he wanted Trace to understand, it's tough. There comes a point in every father's life where he has to allow somebody else to coach his son. And for Wayne, it kind of flip-flopped. He didn't coach his son when he was young. He decided to coach him when he was older. But the reason that point comes is because the kids always look at you as dad, and dad being hard on me instead of coach being hard on me. And Wayne wanted Trace to understand the things that Doug had to go through when he was in the same situation, that, yeah, it's dad, but it's coach first. When you're in between those lines, it's coach first. And coach just wants the best for you, the way he wants for everybody. So I think that served as a calming effect for Trace and allowed him to go out there and play his game.
Lamar, finally, you lead the #2 team on the road by 14. You end up losing. What can the Beavers take out of this game?
Well, I think the biggest thing is we know that the freshmen specifically can go compete on the road in the Pac-12, because we know some Pac-12 environments are very hostile. It doesn't get more hostile than what they were in Kansas City.
Okay. Well, the Beavers end up losing the basketball game, but I think have a spring in their step heading into the Far West Classic this weekend. Now, speaking of which, a former MVP of the Classic, Charlie Sitton, will join us later. But coming up next, a conversation with Papa Tinkle. Head coach Wayne Tinkle joins us next on Talkin' Beavers. Welcome back into Talkin' Beavers. Coming up a little bit later, how about this play that is still creating a buzz? That thing was dunked so hard it almost came out. Yeah, we're going to get to that a little bit later. But first, Lamar, you've got a game ball presented by Wilson Motors.
I got to go with the freshman, Trace Tinkle, to come out in that environment and shoot the ball with that much confidence and knock it down. 5 of 7 from the three. But, I mean, look, Mike, there's no hesitation. Yeah. He already, before this game, so coming into this game, he's shooting 20% from three, but he was doing so many other things to impact the game. Now, if he's making shots as well, watch out.
That was great to see, and we're going to talk about that breakout performance. It's very interesting to me in that the night before, Oregon State head coach Wayne Tinkle was saying he felt that Trace was practicing well and getting ready to do some big things and just feeling better about where he was at. And so it is a pleasure for us to welcome in Oregon State head basketball coach Wayne Tinkle to talk about the game at Kansas and the upcoming Far West Classic. And we'll kind of start right there with the performance by Trace in the game and that big environment in Kansas City. So, Coach, it's great to have you with us. And thanks for joining us here for Talkin' Beavers. And Trace, your son, really had it going, shooting the ball so well. And perhaps you could share a little bit with us just sort of what got him going in that game.
Well, always good to be with you guys. Thanks, Mike. It was neat, and we had a pretty good feeling. In fact, I told Miles Simon at shoot-around, because he asked what I attributed Trace's slow start to as far as shooting goes, and I just think it was a matter of him putting too much pressure on himself as the head coach's son, and he overanalyzed every little thing. If I told him 2 things to do, he took it like I told him 25 things. And I think just the overall adjustment of getting used to the college life, the Division I, especially, high-level talent, and then trying to find his way. And so we had a really good week of practice. He and I shared a pretty good conversation a weekend ago about some of his frustration. I had to clear his mind. I think he was looking at it from the wrong angle, you know, kind of, to be honest, a little bit woe is me, and then he sifted through it. He showed great maturity and understood that it had to come from him. He had to, you know, take the coaching that was being given to him, not take it so hard, and then just keep coming back. And the hard thing is, Mike, we were telling him all of the good things that he was doing out there, like Lamar just mentioned, his impact defensively, his IQ, his toughness plays, but he didn't hear those things. He was just hearing, you know, what he was doing wrong on his shot and that sort of thing. But he got through it. He's shown great maturity, and I just had a really good feeling that we were in a good place. He'd prepared well and had a good week of practice, saw the ball go in a lot in practice. But then to do it on that stage, boy, 18,000 people playing, you know, the number 2 team in the country was great. But it was neat after the game. He gave all the credit, of course, to his teammates, guys setting good screens, you know, Gary delivering the ball on time, Drew gave him a great pass. But it was neat to see, you know, from the coaching standpoint, because it was helping our team get off to a good start. But then also, you know, I shifted into dad mode there for a couple of seconds and, you know, did a couple of fist pumps and that thing, just because I know how much he's struggled with, you know, shooting the ball, and it's been weighing on him. To see him break out of it was really neat to see.
Coach, was there a point in that game against Kansas where you felt like your team went from thinking they could win to expecting to win?
Well, you know, what we said in the locker room beforehand, Lamar, I said, who came here to have fun? And there was a few guys raised their hand. And then I said, who came here to compete? And the rest of the team raised their hands. And then I said, well, us coaches prepared you guys to come in here and win. And we said that again at halftime. We're like, okay, you guys really did a great job in this first half. And I said, you can call it cliche, but we've got to come out like it's 0-0 and have an even better half, because now they know what to expect. And the number 2 team in the country is going to come out and get after us. Unfortunately, we didn't have the same response, you know. But good and bad, we're able to move forward because there was some negative response that we were able to correct throughout that second half. And since we've got back here in Corvallis, and then watching film, you know, we showed the guys the good things they did, but there were some glaring mistakes. Most of them were lack of execution to our defensive game plan. The same urgency offensively as far as setting screens, sharing the ball, making the extra pass. We didn't do those things, and some guys kind of relaxed when we got that lead and maybe thought we were going to coast to victory, and we didn't, quite frankly and quite obviously. So some valuable lessons that we'll learn from, and I know this, it was the best 20 minutes of basketball we've played to date, that first half. Yep. So that's a sign that we're heading in the right direction. There were some minutes in the second half we gave it away, but you know, we'll learn from that. And overall, you know, we don't accept moral victories, but we do think that we matured and grew up in that ball game.
Well, Coach, you were up 14 against the number 2 team in the country before over 18,000 fans in Kansas City. Bill Self, the Kansas head coach, after the game said that was their best 20 minutes of the season, that clearly. And they played a lot of good teams. They had to fight back to win that game. But they were led by a guy that you told me may have been the best player you ever coached against in Wayne Selden Jr. in that second half comeback.
Yeah, you know, well, even before the second half, you know, he didn't hit his first 2 threes until under 2 minutes of the first half. And that kind of scared us a little bit, like, oh boy, you know, now he's going to start to get it going. And I tell you, he hit a pull-up 3 in the second half that was his toughest shot, you know, as you see, at full speed, pulls up 4 or 5 feet behind the line and drills it. But more importantly, and this is, you know, a very valuable lesson for some of our guys, is, you know, he was yelling at the bigs for not being physical enough, for not screening as hard. Even their point guard yelled at Selden for passing up a 3 after he had banged a few to make the extra pass. And he was like, hey, great extra pass, but take that shot. And so you've got to have that kind of leadership out on the court. and right now we've got it from one guy. We need to start getting from multiple. Just, as we continue to try to improve, you've got to have that kind of leadership and chemistry out on the court, and we're still searching for it a little bit.
Well, Coach, thank you for taking some time with us on all of that. When we come back, more with Coach Tinkle about the Far West Classic revival, the Far West Classic invite coming up. So more with the coach. But as we go to break, another trivia question about the Far West Classic. Who won the MVP in the '93 Far West Classic? Welcome back into Talkin' Beavers. Going to break, we asked who was the MVP of the 1993 Far West Classic, and it was none other than Brent Berry. So congratulations to Brent. That was an exciting classic in the final years, in the halcyon days, really, of the classic, late 70s, early 80s. A guy named Charlie Sitton starred. And Charlie, who was an MVP, joins us next here on the set of Talkin' Beavers. But we continue our conversation with Oregon State head coach Wayne Tinkle.
Coach, I want to talk to you a little bit on the defensive side of the basketball. Last year, that's where you guys hung your hat. And I talked to you last week, and we talked about how because you're scoring so much this year, maybe there's not as much of an urgency from your team. There is from your staff, but maybe not from your players yet, as to how important it is to defend at that same level. Another factor, Daniel Gomez, who anchored your 2-3 zone. I don't know if people understand how important he was in terms of rebound and communication. Kind of explain some of the challenges you've had with getting your team to play as hard defensively so far this year as they did last year.
Well, those are both great points. And, before the second half of Kansas, we were defending pretty well. Our numbers, were ranked, I think, second in the Pac-12 to this point. And we played, I think, a tougher schedule than we did a year ago. But I think the bigger key is what you mentioned about Daniel Gomez not being out there. There is a little bit maybe where we feel a little fool's gold, because we have some more weapons offensively. That urgency isn't there, even though we harp on it day in and day out, because that always needs to be the cornerstone of the way we go about it. But man, when you don't have a guy behind, whether it's zone or man, that's sort of the traffic cop, that's calling out the cuts, the actions, shooters, the drivers. It's hard because guys, as much as you preach, you've got to always see ball you man, those principles. It's great to have a guy back there reminding you of those things, and we just don't have that out of our young bigs right now. Drew's working hard. We're trying to get Big G to learn how to communicate that way. Just if we can get Daniel back on the court for practice, then they'll almost learn through osmosis by being out there and guarding him every day. They'll see the value in it. So. We miss the big guy. We hope to get him out. Not sure if we're going to have him this weekend, but before long, because not only can he help us, but he'll really help bring along those youngs along those lines as well.
Yeah.
Coach, when you mentioned Drew Eubanks, and it's going to be a nice event for him this weekend, a young man out of Reynolds High School, kind of coming back to his hometown area. He's blocked a lot of shots, and that's been exciting, compelling action for fans. But are you saying there's still some things he needs to learn about positioning when it comes to defense?
No, certainly. Yeah, right now his head's swimming. He's still trying to learn all of our different concepts. So how can we expect him to communicate those things to others? But, he's a guy that, as young as he is, he's got to learn to keep his mind focused. Sometimes in practice, he'll get a little bored at times and his mind will drift, and then that's where he'll make some mistakes. So it's all part of his inexperience. He's only played 4 years of basketball, and when he's focused and working hard, boy, there's nobody working as hard as he is. But we've got to get him to do that more consistently, and he's such a great kid that he really gets down on himself when he knows that he makes some mistakes. But and you look at his rebound numbers, with his ability to get off the floor, his athleticism, he should be rebounding the ball better than he is, but he gets himself playing a little bit too up and down, and he's easy to shove around. And even offensively, sometimes he runs to the ball when we want him to kind of be hiding in that ghost corner, in the short corner, where we can throw the ball up to the rim or drop it off to him. And so they're all concepts that are new to him. We've got to be patient, but yet, you know, it's kind of like, God, give me patience, but please hurry. We need him to come along a little bit more quickly because league's right around the corner.
Your first game in the Far West Classic is against Cal State Fullerton. What do you know about them so far?
Well, you know, I know their coach, Dietrich Taylor, from way back when, and he's a very hard-nosed, tough, competitive guy, and his teams are going to reflect that, you know, when he has the time to get in, you know, 2 or 3, 4 of his recruiting classes. But they're very athletic. They've got some guys that can pull the trigger from deep and get to the rim. You know, they look to pressure you defensively. They mix and match a little bit to try to keep you from getting into a rhythm. So it's going to pose a little bit of the same challenges as maybe Nevada. You know, an athletic team that flies around, tries to get you to play out of your comfort zone, and we got to make sure that we don't buy into that.
And they already have wins this year. They only won 9 games last year. They've won 6. They've defeated Nevada. They've defeated San Diego. They've won at Pacific. So this is a good team. Then you get a big challenge with Tulsa the next night. So, Coach, as we wrap it up, we appreciate you joining us. Any final thoughts about you bringing the Beavers to the big city of Portland this weekend?
Well, we're just really excited. I mean, we kind of came with this idea. It'd be nice during Christmas break when our students are gone to get up to Portland and play, you know, a marquee game. And then the idea, what about the Far West Classic? I remember bringing the question up, what happened to that? And then when Mark Massari got on board, you know, he kind of took that and ran with it and got people going at the Moda Center, you know, talked with Nike, with the Blazers. And we're thrilled to be coming up to an incredible city where we know all teams are going to be received well, and we're going to be shown great hospitality, and we're going to bring high-quality basketball. Not that it's not already there, you know, when you talk about Portland State and Portland and the Trailblazers, but let's bring some teams from around the country that maybe folks don't get a chance to see very often, and make it a great weekend. We're happy to be up there. We know that there's over 60,000 former Beavs up there as far as alums go, and we want to bring our brand of basketball and hopefully create some momentum up there and keep this thing going. So come out, check us out, cheer for the Beavs, wear your orange and black, and we'll make it a great weekend.
Well, Wayne, we appreciate you joining us. Coach Tinkle excited to be bringing his Oregon State basketball team to the Moda Center. Now, back in the day, of course, it was the Memorial Coliseum, and the Beavers dominated the great event, led by players such as Steve Johnson and
look at those
Gary
shorts, Mike.
Payton, and our own Charlie Sitton. Beautiful shorts, and Charlie joins us next on Talkin' Beavers. And a pleasure to welcome in an MVP from the Far West Classic in the 1981-82 campaign, none other than Oregon State's own, McMinnville's own, Charlie Sitton. Charlie, it's great to see you. Thanks for joining us here.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Hey, let me ask you about the Classic. You were an MVP in it. The Beavers won it every year, save one that you played. You got the MVP in the year you didn't win. But it struck me, Charlie, that was a big event for you, your teammates. It meant a lot to you guys.
Well, it meant a lot to us. There's several of us from Oregon that were playing on the team, and you know, the following we had with you know, you goes back to the class of '77 with Ainge, Radford, Bloom, Stout, all undefeated in the state tournament, and then to have you know, 3 of them go to Oregon State, you get a chance to come back like myself and Jamie Stangl to come back and play in the Classic in front of all your fans. It was a great experience. It really was. It was a great time.
And the games were very competitive, too. You played Oregon twice for the championship and beat them both times in the championship game. You were 10-0 all-time in the Civil War. Charlie, I know that we're talking Far West Classic, but to beat those guys twice in the title game meant a lot, too.
Yeah, it was always a good rivalry. I mean, Mr. Gregg was down there, John Gregg, and there was some guys, some competition that came on from high school days, and so it was just a great experience to get to play. Anytime you get to beat the Ducks, it's a good day. Come on, I will admit to that. But it was great fun to come back and play in the state of Oregon, and to play. It was a great Christmas between Christmas and New Year. Christmas and New Year's was a great time. A lot of people were home for the holidays, and it was just a great kind of reunion and a chance to come back and play in front of a great crowd.
Charlie, I got a bone to pick with you. I got Mike. Read that record for me again. What was he in Pac-10 play?
50-12. Charlie went in Pac-10 play.
So when I played, all I heard is, why can't y'all be like Charlie's teams?
Hey, that's
the Orange Express. Why can't you? And we didn't make it to the NCAA tournament. The NIT was the closest we got. But as you see this team this year under Wayne Tinkle, does this look like the kind of team that's heading the NCAA tournament direction?
You know, I think so. There's a nice mix of players. It really is. And to back up a little bit, we tried to set that high expectation so guys like you could come along and make it all and follow our footsteps. But I liked what he's done. I like Wayne. We've went through some different coaches. We've all had our own opinions about that. But I really like what Wayne's done. He's a guy like us. He's a coach. He coaches the basketball. I think he's got a good mix of players, and I think he's done a great job with the kids that he inherited to bring those other guys with them. And I think it's just nobody's jumped off the bandwagon yet. I think they've all kind of bought in. And for me to look at a new coach to come in and maybe your junior, senior year and get the guys still to buy in, I think that's a lot to be said for him.
Well, you had some say-so in Wayne Tinkle coming aboard, being a part of the committee. What was it about him that let you know that this was the guy for the job?
Well, I think, as you well know, there was 3 or 4 good candidates, and I think what we had to get over the thought of that this is a good job. It is a Pac-12 job. It is Oregon State basketball. There's a lot of history at Oregon State basketball, and I think what we had to do was get past that, oh my God, this is a crappy job. You have no facilities. You have nothing. It is a great job. You get to play in a great league. You can get some good kids in there. They've got a good practice facility now, thanks to Coach Robinson. And I think let's move forward instead of continuing to go look backwards on it. And I think Wayne's done that. I think he's bringing some new young guys in. It's nice to have a bunch of guys on your coaching staff to come in and play for you, which is good. But I like what he's bringing in next year. And if he continues to coach these guys up until the last shot goes up, that's what all young kids like you and I were when we played. You know, we'll show up, you point us in a direction, we'll run through the wall for you.
Leadership.
And exactly. And I think that's what he's brought to Oregon State basketball.
And Charlie, it's not a bone to pick. That's Lamar's phrase. I'm a little kinder, softer, gentler in that respect. But
because you didn't have to go out there and play, Mike.
That's true. That's true. I'll just sit there and talk on the radio. Nothing hard about that. But, well, you see, you don't want to keep going back, and I get that. But when I look back to the team you played on in 80-81 that was ranked #1 in the country, and Ralph Miller coaching that team, and Wayne Tinkle seems to have some similarities and characteristics about his priorities and the way he coaches. So what can you tell us about that? How Ralph coached and what you see maybe Wayne's approach with the guys that he's coaching now?
Well, I think first of all you need a system. You need some type of a system that, and you have to have enough confidence in that system to stick with the system. And as we go along here in year 2, 3, and 4, we'll see if that's, you have to be able to adjust with your talent, #1, but you have to have a system. And I think Wayne's got a system. You play tough defense. You play team basketball, and I think he's got some set plays that we can try to get some shots for some guys where maybe Trace Tinkle, or if it's the other freshman Thompson, where they can catch it and shoot it. I mean, we all know, we like to know when you walk out on the court and they call a play where you got a chance to maybe get your shot up a couple times. And I think that's something that he does. And then it's just a matter of buying in and working at it and playing together. I think that's the biggest thing. You can get away with a lot of things by playing hard, playing good defense, and playing team basketball. And I think that's what I'm starting to see.
So, Charlie, in closing, as you conduct your business down at the Century Hotel and at Hayden's Grill, continuing to do
great restaurant,
great hotel. Tremendous place. As you do that and you're around a lot of people, you're around Beaver Nation a lot, what's the buzz, a sense of excitement about the Far West Classic, but just in general about Oregon State athletics right now?
Well, I think it's the Far West Classic is going to be nice to get a game up here in Portland. People in Portland are dying. Bring us something. Give us something to cheer for. Let us something. Baseball did it a few years ago, and they brought a baseball game to town, and so I think that'll be the exciting part. It's not the big Far West Classic like we used to play in, but it's a start. It's something to start with, and I think it'll give everybody a chance to see Coach Tinkle in action and his team, and everybody kind of can buy in on what's going on down there. As far as Oregon State in general, I think let's hope it's on the up and up. We want to winning solves a lot of problems. Let's put it that way. The expectations that Wayne set last year in basketball, I think, were pretty high, but let's hope we can continue to build on that. And obviously, football's the thing that runs the whole thing. So hopefully, they can keep working that way too, and keep building that program. program.
Charlie, great to have you with us.
Yes.
Thanks
Thank
for
you.
being on Talkin' Beavers. And MVP himself. And as we go to break, MVP in Civil War, he never lost. But we have a bigger question right now relative to the Far West Classic. Who was named MVP of the Classic a record 3 times?
That one's not Charlie, too?
Charlie only got it 1 time, but he was
He
unbeaten.
did everything else?
50-12 and unbeaten. We'll have an answer next on Talkin' Beavers. And we wondered before the break who was named MVP of the Far West Classic a record 3 times, and it was none other than Gary Payton. And we're going to hear from Gary's son a little bit later as we roll on Talkin' Beavers. It's time now, though, for the Toyota of Portland on Broadway tune-up as we take a look at the remaining schedule for the Beavers at the Mondo Pad with Lamar Hurd. So we've already taken a look at the 3 teams ahead, Lamar. So in order from 3 to 1, what are the more difficult challenges? I guess the easiest first.
So you want me to put the easiest lowest?
Yes. Put
okay,
the easiest
game
hole.
of these 3 is going to be right here. Quinnipiac. Yes, you know, there'll be quality, and you got to watch out a little bit because it's going to be right before the Christmas break, and a lot of times players can take those kind of nights off. So if you're Oregon State, you have to guard against that. Quinnipiac is a tough team.
Well, they beat the Beavers last year.
They did. They're a tough team from the East Coast, but I think that this year's Oregon State team could take care of them pretty handily.
They out-rebounded. They out-rebound almost everybody, though, and they out-rebounded Oregon State last year.
That was last year.
Yeah, okay.
Well, Drew Eubanks wasn't playing last year. You know, there's some big guys.
But it's a
little
payback
different.
game, so I agree with you on that. Okay, now, interesting teams in the Far West Classic.
Yeah, this one is a tough one, you know, because it could kind of be a coin toss, but I'm going to have to go with Cal State Fullerton as the second easiest game. And I don't even like using the word easiest because there's not going to be anything easy about it. Cal State Fullerton actually beat the same Nevada team that Oregon State struggled with, and it took them the last few possessions to put them away. They won on the road at Seattle. They beat a Southern Utah team that people might not know by name, but you and I know in the basketball world, that's a quality basketball team.
They won at Pacific, too. I mean, this is a much improved team
Very
from
much
a year
improved.
ago.
Yeah.
So, if Cal State Fullerton...
Can you guess who I'm going with on the last one, Mike?
I have a pretty good shot at getting this one right. How about Tulsa?
I'm going with Tulsa, the Golden Hurricane, led by Frank Haight, former coach at Missouri. They are a quality opponent. Now, they've had some losses where you may scratch your head if you just look on the schedule and you see Arkansas Little Rock. Arkansas Little Rock is undefeated right now and a very good team. But this team will be able to match up with Oregon State physically, and it's not going to be the kind of game that Oregon State can take lightly. They'll have to shoot the ball well. They'll have to execute well if they want to win in that game.
So taking a look, Lamar, at these 3 games left before the start of Pac-12 play, how important are all of these games with respect to what the Beavers' goals are for this season?
Very important. I say all 3 must-wins. You don't want to go into conference play with a 3rd loss in a non-conference. I think they're all winnable games, and you're going to need these once March rolls around.
And what about the postseason? I mean, you need all 3 of these. The Pac-12 looks tough.
Well, the Pac-12, it is tough, and it's balanced. And it's balanced without an elite team necessarily. And what that does, national perception-wise, is it makes you wonder, well, is the league really that good? And because of that, you have to win these games. Otherwise, people will say, well, it's not balanced with a lot of good teams. It's just okay.
Well, 3 big games coming up. Thanks, Lamar. And coming up next on this Far West Classic edition of Talkin' Beavers is none other than GP2. Gary Payton, too, with the dunk of the year and a lot more.
I got to ask you about that.
Absolutely. And that's next.
Half an hour behind the back. Oh, no. Oh, my. Gary Payton, the left-hand hammer. Jumper too strong, but he steals it right back. Gary Payton, the second.
Payton, nice drive. Some nifty footwork.
Stephen Thompson gets to the lane, drops it off. Gary Payton, second. Oh my goodness.
Gary Payton, the second, flying inside with the left-hand hammer.
We welcome you into Talkin' Beavers. I see that, and I want to laugh. It was that play, that dunk just brought joy out in the announcers on the national telecast and certainly on the Beaver Sports Radio Network. We had the opportunity earlier on the show to visit with Oregon State head coach Wayne Tinkle, and now it's a true honor to welcome in the man who I think made the play of the year in college basketball, our own GP2, Gary Payton II.
Well, Mike, I'm sure you weren't surprised by that dunk. We've seen that a lot throughout his career so far at Oregon State. Gary, now I know you've been asked 100 questions already about that dunk, but now it's my turn. All right. At what point did you know you were about to put Diallo, the big man from Kansas, on the poster?
As soon as Mason opened up and gave me that baseline, I knew I had to do what I had to do.
Simple. Well, you did it. That's for sure. You know, you following in your dad's footsteps.
That's it.
Yeah, you're following in your pop's footsteps, and it's something you and I have talked about before, and kind of the pressure that comes along with that. I want to know, because sometimes I know being on the court can be a release for you, but is there any time when you're outside of Gill Coliseum, where you're just in your apartment or you're in class, and you feel the pressure of not only trying to get Oregon State back to the NCAA tournament, but the job you have to do in leading a group of freshmen along with you in your journey?
Yeah, you know, I take it as a challenge, and last year was definitely that year to get it, the spark started and to get it going, and they just come in, you know, and to help what we left off, and of course it's our job as the vets to put them on our backs and get them going and get them into what we believe in, what we've been into with the new coaching staff, and to keep them on the right page as us.
Hey, Gary, you had your steals streak snapped in the game where you had the dunk of the year in college basketball. So maybe there's a bit of a trade-off there. But the streak ends at 38, and you break your dad's record. So the names at the top of that category, Gary Payton and Gary Payton. What does that mean to you?
I think it's a great accomplishment for me, and I really don't try to dwell on it too much, but I think it's pretty cool, and you know, I gotta get back to what I do on the defensive side, you know, and help my team do whatever we can to get that W.
Gary, don't try to be all nice about it. Your mama calls you the thief. And it's the primary reason why you know I don't trust you as is. And I don't walk by you when we're in Gill Coliseum because you make so many plays on the defensive end. And you've been a special player for Oregon State. Now you're about to take your talents up to the Portland area. What's your message to Portland area Beaver fans to come out and support the team and you in the Far West Classic this weekend?
It's going to be a great environment. We know we got a lot of big fan base up in Portland. You know, they always can't make it down here to Corvallis, you know, to come to great Gill Coliseum. So we're going to take the festivities up to Portland and give them a great show.
Gary, I wanted to ask you about the team defense, you know, the fact that we talked to Coach Tinkle about it too. As a leader and the steals guy, how do you see the team defense shaping up going forward, the importance of kind of being on the same page defensively?
Our team defense is getting way better. You know, we just got Jamal Reed back in the lineup, so he's another leader and vocal leader out there to help our young guys. And I think once we get Daniel back in the middle, it's going to help. He's going to help Drew Ebanks out in the middle and make him more vocal. And us guards up top is to get the young guards talking and communicating just as well. And I think we're doing a great job of getting everybody on the same page.
GP2, thank you for joining us. Thank you for the incredible dunk that'll be talked about forever. It's one of the great moments. We all appreciate it. Thank you for joining us. That's Gary Payton II here on Talkin' Beavers. Now, the 40-year basketball tradition returns, as Lamar and Gary talked about. It's the Far West Classic. We've been talking about it throughout the show, and we hope to see so much of Beaver Nation back at the Moda Center this weekend, Friday and Saturday night. Go to to csnnw.com right now for your chance to win tickets to the Far West Classic Invite. Friday and Saturday night, the Beavers in action against Fullerton and then against Tulsa. Welcome back into our final segment of Talkin' Beavers. We've been talking about it the whole show. I'm so excited. I loved this holiday tradition. I came to them a lot back in the day. You've never experienced
I wasn't born for some of them.
I get that for most of them. But Lamar, we're really excited to see the Beavers come back to the Moda Center in the Rose City for the Far West Classic Invite. And I know a young man that is looking forward to playing wherever it is the highly touted freshman Stephen Thompson Jr. He's called Stephen, his dad Stevie. Stevie told me that Kansas did a great job in scouting the Beavers and kind of took Stephen Thompson a little bit out of his game.
I think that's the biggest compliment he can have, the fact that Bill Self, who will be a Hall of Fame coach, is game planning for you to take you out the game. But it's because of his ability. The kid can do a lot of stuff. And I called him Steph Curry before Steph Curry became Steph Curry, meaning the skill set, the ability to shoot the ball off the dribble, to be elusive with his handle, and the way he has closed certain games. You know, at the end of the Nevada game, you can make the argument Oregon State doesn't win that game at home without Stephen Thompson's last, 2-3 minutes or so. It was really impressive, nice to see, but he's a really talented player.
Yeah, the way he scored in a variety of ways was great to see. Some final thoughts, Lamar, about the Beavers coming to the city this weekend. Two really good teams they're playing.
Yeah, and two games that they have to win. You know, Wayne Tinkle definitely doesn't want to lose these two games for several reasons. One, as you look for postseason aspirations, or wherever that may land them. And you're coming to Portland. You know, you have your biggest base. Wayne Tinkle referred to it, over 60,000 alum in the city. So you want to make sure you give them a good show.
Lamar, we look forward to seeing you up here so you can experience the Far West Classic that I was experiencing long before you were born. But we hope that many of you will enjoy the revival of the Far West Classic Invite, GP2 and company, coming to the Moda Center. In our next edition of Talkin' Beavers, we'll talk about that on January 5th in the year of our Lord 2016.
Is Lindsay going to be there?
You'll be here too. Thanks for joining us. So long, everybody.